Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another live stream of Shadowverse. Let's hop into the game. We probably are less than a week away from a new expansion coming out for Shadowverse. See, there's something else I was gonna mention, but I kind of have forgotten it. Yeah, it was just on the tip of my mind and I've forgotten it. Well, let's re-roll this. So, Havencraft and Portalcraft, and then ranked matches in general today. Let's open one card packet at the very least. We've lost that extra additional cards? No. They're still here. Let's get those open then. We might as well get the add-on packs because I bet these add-on packs do disappear in the next couple of days. I spent the weekend not scheduling, which I should have done more of, but instead playing Pinball Arcade, which is at least making recordings and doing a little bit of work to set up a RetroPie install. Stupidly, when I originally made my RetroPie image a couple of years ago, I used a Raspberry Pi Model B. I ordered a couple of replacement ones in case one of those would break, but accidentally ordered the Model B Plus, and the two do not work together. The software needs newer software, and my image is just older software. So it's just not like forward compatible where you could take it in the same way that you probably couldn't take an image of a hard drive that had Windows 3.1 installed on it and put it on a brand new computer and expect that to work out of the box. So I'm going to have to start all over, which is fine because this image is more going to be around the idea of potentially accessing a lot more games and being more of a complete collection. Not that there really is a way to do that still, because there is just not enough space. Like you can't reasonably, for the amount of money you would spend, get a micro SD card that has like 5 terabytes of hard drive space, where a external hard drive being plugged in could do that. So that's the idea, is that I'll get an external hard drive, which that won't be too difficult. Havencraft and Portalcraft, had to remind myself there. But yeah, I should have done some scheduling. I also had worn out my voice playing pinball and my fingers playing pinball enough that late last night I was more just goofing off, thinking about using MakeCode, which is a drag and drop equivalent to like Scratch programming for the Circuit Playground Express that I got for free from Adafruit on Raspberry Pi. Normally I would just use the Arduino IDE to program it, but since the Circuit Playground Express is 100% an educational thing anyways, it kind of doesn't make sense to use a more complicated, less standard programming language, particularly since it looks like you can upload your projects to MakeCode itself and share with kids. So if there is a bit of a community there, although arguably maybe there isn't that much of a community there, because like the BBC has much more backing and funding potentially than Adafruit does, and they have the BBC microbit, which is missing some of the features that are built into the Circuit Playground Express. But part of my, in my opinion, there is there is a case and an argument certainly to be made that the Circuit Playground Express has too many devices on it. Having an accelerometer and an IR transceiver that transmits and receives, and a speaker, and a temperature meter, and a microphone, and have 10 neopixels on it, and a whole bunch of context around the rounded edges of the circuit board is just a lot of connections and components, which creates a great no solder system if you could really lock into that being your system. But there's not enough community so far that I've seen that works with it. Like, there aren't enough tutorials, there aren't enough projects. That being said, a lot of Steam programs, more Steam programs, whether you include art or not, often are cases where it's like going to a planetarium more than a 2, 3, 4 week course. So like a lot of times there is like one egg drop project, and that is the only thing that is taught over and over again amongst the kids, and the kids get cycled out amongst many schools throughout a school system. So even having just one basic 2-3 hour project using the Circuit Playground Express might be the only thing that gets taught. Whereas ideally you would want to be able to hand one of these to a kid and hand them a project book that would take all summer or all year for them to learn different things and program different things and try different tricks. It should be something close to one of those books that would say 101 projects you can do with this, not here's a $20, $25 circuit board that you can program one thing on, and most people will only program one thing on, and then get bored and never use it again.
Oh, so it's a fight you want. That was delightful.
And that is kind of the problem with the Circuit Playground. In a lot of ways, is that you either have like a great one project experience with it, and then you keep it with that code and you don't ever change the code, or maybe you have a great 2-3 project experience with it, then you get bored with it.
I can't keep running from my sins.
It's also kind of the same thing with like Lego. Like it's not just electronics. Like I think I probably played with Lincoln Logs when I was a kid once, maybe twice. So I got like a Christmas present of Lincoln Logs when I was very young. Probably played with it twice, got bored, and then forgot about it. So I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case for a lot of projects. When I even now play with Legos, I build them and then I put them away on display, and that's pretty much it. I don't ever play with them or anything like that. But in all fairness, since I got into Lego when I was an adult, I was building them as display models and ships in the bottle equivalents anyways. But had I gotten an NES and played with it once, that would have been ridiculous. And when you come to the realm of software, you are just at a very different scale. There's also a problem with pinballs, as why I've never like really thought about getting a pinball cabinet. Even if the maintenance wasn't an issue, which it definitely is for pinball cabinets. Even if I got something like Funhouse or Twilight Zone, ideally I would have wanted to get Twilight Zone, which is also one of the most expensive rare ones to get, or has been in the past at least. I probably would only play with it maybe once a month. It would be a very, very expensive very, like, large, physically speaking, item.
Sugar's the best cure for the blues, you know.
But yeah. So that's pretty much what I've been doing. Just first steps of installing Raspberry Pi. Oh, I almost, using the Raspberry Pi imager, it allowed me to select, in kind of a confusing way, my backup hard drive on my computer. And it overwrote the partition, and nearly erased 5 terabytes of data, or almost 5 terabytes of data. Fortunately, I was able to just use test disk for Windows to go in there and find the old partition, because I hadn't written anything new to the hard drive. But yeah, that was definitely far too easy to accidentally write an image to the hard drive. So I would not recommend using the Raspberry Pi imager at the moment, because they should be able to tell, like, they even had a different icon to say this was an internal hard drive. So I don't know what they would have even been thinking to offer that. They did eliminate the C drive and the SSDs. Actually, both SSDs were not listed, so they chose to not show both SSDs in my hard drive, and yet, but they did show the hard drive, and that just doesn't make much sense. 3 puppets in your hand, and then 1 there. Take that out.
Don't look so disappointed.
Go ahead and evolve this guy.
Welcome to the sky.
Take that. In the turn.
Welcome, neighbor.
I did run into a problem while trying to get the Raspberry Pi, the Retro Pi set up, that it doesn't seem like you can plug in the USB input of my Fight Stick into it and have it connect to Bluetooth all at the same time. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a little bit of setup in general that has to be done. And I don't know if RetroPie's emulation station even supports mouse input at all. I don't think it does, so the trackball is kind of useless. Well, we can do this. I should have probably done something else first. Let's see, hit that. And then hit that.
The fighting persists.
And then hit that. I'm probably going to be slightly rushed today, so I probably should just jump into the news. It does look like a couple of problems. The network problems seem to have kind of finally been fixed, and so I haven't had to mess with quality of service or anything. We haven't had any hang-ups or anything with Shadowverse. My cell phone still, a couple times a day, loses connection, which is weird. But I honestly think that has more to do with some shenanigans that have happened just in my neighborhood. There's been one too many Wi-Fi installed, Wi-Fi's installed or something like that.
Time to get
I still haven't worked on my server or anything. That thing's just been off. Both of them. I did realize that there's a potential way to get it to not power up all the hard drives when it first turns on, which that is a slight problem because that causes the battery backup to beep and sound an alarm. Not a big issue, but as it potentially grows, having more hard drives take up more power, it would be nice if it more had a sequential powering up instead of a huge current draw. But will this work? Or, I mean, you can do this better. Why did that not do more damage?
One step at a time. I can do this.
I thought that was gonna do 1 damage to everything.
You're through.
We can do this together. Do it for her.
Time to get cut.
The actual pinball tables that I played over the weekend were the 1990s tables. So Diner, I think I played on the weekend, which is an updated version of Taxi, and honestly I think Taxi might be better, just like a spiritual successor to Taxi, which Taxi is a decent table, maybe a little too simplistic for modern sentimentality. Then there was Dr. Dude, which was a very retro throwback table that felt like it was inspired by the movie Weird Science, which would have been out at that time. And that was a pretty awful table. Do this.
Memento mori. Bring me whiskers.
Well, I did not realize that was going to do something like that.
Biceps will usher in a new age. Time to get cut.
And then after Dr. Dude was, I believe, Elvira's table, which I definitely liked that one. And then after Elvira's table, there was Phantom of the Opera, which was apparently a licensed table based on the book Phantom of the Opera, which made it feel very weird because it didn't have any of the Andrew Lloyd Webber music track. Instead, it kind of had a bass guitar, like heavy metal music track, which felt very out of place. Also, I've had to point out that several of these tables are fairly sexist. While I did realize that actually there wasn't that many that had like full-on nudity in them, like Phantom of the Opera had the main female character, Christine Dye, in fancy Victorian of its time underwear in every single depiction of her. And then they have her do like one line of dialogue throughout the entire table, and the rest of the time it's just a boring sounding phantom. You effectively are playing as the Phantom of the Opera, which is weird to be playing as the antagonist more than the protagonist of a story. But yeah, the same is true for Dr. Dude. There's like a nurse character that gets no lines of dialogue and no characterization. She's just drawn on the table art. And I know you can't do that much with characters anyways, but there was Lights, Camera, Action was another table that I covered, and it has 2 female characters drawn on the table art, and they play no role at all. They have no voice lines. They don't logically exist at all. Lights, Camera, Action being like a movie director, Steven Spielberg character type, making a movie, and there's just these females drawn there. Maybe in the 90s, just including females was as progressive as you could get, but in 2021, it seems like you are just making them arm candy, and you're just embracing tokenism. Lights, Camera, Action also as a table has a Dirty Harry type character, a cop, in a gunfight for the movie, and he's shooting this Jamaican looking African American type character in a quick draw, and you do that gunfight scene quite a lot, and so they even have to animate him so that it made it perfectly clear he was a police officer holding up a badge, and that he was in the right, even for the 90s sentimentality. But yeah, Phantom of the Opera, it does a poor job, I think, of converting the book or the Lloyd Webber play, and making it mostly just does a poor job of making a fun table, which is the main issue certainly with a lot of them. One of the tables I covered also just didn't run very well. It must have been one of the very first tables Pinball Arcade programmed, because when it loads into a table, it almost certainly is loading into different versions of its code, and some of them definitely crash in some scenarios. Let's go ahead and kill that.
How dare you?
Instinct is what you truly believe in.
And then there was one I played after Phantom of the Opera, which would have been Whirlwind. Which Whirlwind is a table I did play in the real world. It was the table that had a fan that would blow on you. There's an interesting thought I had about the problem with having a fan on the top of the backboard of a pinball table, is that if you were at the time in the 90s at, say, a bowling alley, there would have been smoking sections and non-smoking sections, and so a fan nearer to the top of the room very possibly would have been blowing the smokier cigarette smoke directly into the face of kids. Plus, fans in general throw off the player and make you. It's weird to have a fan blowing in your face for sure, and it was just a gimmick that doesn't really do much. Cyclone is basically based off the movie Twister, and more in the 90s you'll see tables that are just stealing the generic concept of a movie. Remember that arcades in movie theaters also would have been a thing, definitely in the 90s. So playing a pinball table that felt a lot like a movie that was airing at the time would have made a lot of sense. Cyclone is a table that's it's weird. It has a right ramp that lands directly onto one of 3 sand discs that spin the ball in weird ways, which makes you have to hit every shot very deliberately and very hard. It has a very tight center lane shot for quick multi-ball, that you have to hit, and that's really difficult. It has a line of drop-down targets in the middle of the table that are almost directly horizontal, vertical, so that you can't actually hit them with the lower left or right flipper. You can only really hit it by bouncing the ball or flipping it with the upper right flipper. And you're pretty much just gonna start a multi-ball on Cyclone. I don't even know if you could get a bonus multiplier on the table. And one of the standard goals was just straight up glitched as far as I could tell, since Pinball Arcade gives you these standard goals. So, I guess I could have attacked with something and then healed the second time.
The gods grant mercy. Found a weak spot.
Yeah, I could have played a little bit better than there. So yeah, I got very frustrated with Cyclone trying to get a specific shot in, thinking I had done what the instructions on the table tell you to do to get that shot, but it just was not working. And then the pro mode and ball control, where you can just theoretically move the ball wherever you want, does not work on any of the tables at all. Maybe if I lowered the resolution of the tables, it might work better. Or maybe I need to lower the frame rate. Can we do anything here to save the day? We can hit that.
Found a weak spot.
We can hit that.
I could get used to this whole fate thing.
So now if he attacks, he kills this guy. And then I pretty much win. Next turn.
The sound of my faith shattering.
Witness the power.
I'm not sure I played a table after Cyclone. If I did, it was an incredibly forgettable one.
Hear that? The sound of my faith shattering. What was that?
The fact that I'm scheduling and premiering videos when I schedule them also puts more pressure on me to actually consistently schedule videos, but I don't think I'll probably be convinced to bother with that. Like, my motivation is low always as far as making scheduling videos. Well, I would needed 2 more damage, so I lost there. Alright, well, let's start going through the video game news. Here we have something called Fighta Puri Samurai, which I have no idea what language this is. It seems to be a mix of 3D graphics and pixely graphics. Let's see. They're calling it a procedural generation retro first-person shooter for $9.99. English, full audio. I don't get this name though. Fighta Puri. Like, it looks kind of like it's anime girls as part of the focus here, but I don't know if this is a joke game or what. It seems like it would be. It's almost like this is what a Duke Nukem game would have been. It does feel a lot like Duke Nukem 3D. Well, I guess I'll put it on the follow list and see if anybody has anything to say about it. It does seem weird. It does feel like it is just going for the troll symptoms of putting in anime asset flips and making a generic first-person shooter. So I don't know if there is an attempt here to make an actual good game or not. Next we have Seki Bankai Head Adventure. Seki Bankai, which looks like it's a top-down twin-stick shooter. Early access, Chinese only. Doesn't look particularly interesting to me. $6.29. Oh man, am I just showing the wrong thing again? Yeah, I am, Andre.
Perish in my flame.
Alright, well, let me fix that. Let's see, where are you, mouse? Yeah, unfortunately, it has gotten really, really bad as far as moving monitors around. Okay, so I'll show that game again probably at the very end of the stream because I couldn't get to it. But good thing I noticed that, or we could have gone hours and hours with me just showing the streaming stuff, which I don't think there's anything incriminating or personal, private on that screen. But you always want to be careful when streaming not to leak out information. Alright, so this should now work. Here's Sekibunkai Head Adventure, which, yeah, looks like nothing. Theoretically, I could not do the web peek at all and just talk about the games. That would just be a worse experience. Here we have a game called Ninja Lex. I would also say that we're really not getting that many adult games on Steam anymore. Maybe Steam has turned the screws a little bit tighter and reduced a lot of them. So, like, I probably could just jump from game to game and go through them a bit quicker. This is $9.99, English only. I don't know if there really is anything here for this beat 'em up game, but it might be something worth keeping an eye on. I think I'm probably fairly generous today since it's a Monday and I haven't been bombarded with terrible Steam trash. Yeah, we have a game called Ether Way, which looks like it's a top-down space game. They're calling it a real-time strategy with action roguelike for $10.99, English and Russian. Nothing there is impressive. Just gonna lose at this rate. And then we have like Mega Solitaire Collection, which I guess the question is what makes it mega. You've got some anime characters of several different kinds of card skins, which is what you would want to see in a collection of solitaire games, is that you could just skin things. 70 different solitaire variations is not the highest number. You could easily get up into the thousands, although 70 is probably more than enough. And then card sets in anime, fantasy, and cute animal styles. It kind of gives you a little bit of everything, which is an interesting offer. $1.69 is not terrible either. Here they've put a list here of the solitaire games. So What you would look for is something under K for Klondike, which is not listed here, so I don't know what they mean there. They have double Klondike, but not Klondike. Do they have triple Klondike? No, they have triple line. Do they have pyramid? And see, some of these Solitaire games, there's no P games. Oh, here, up here. Klondike, 3-cell, 3 peaks, pyramid, and spider Solitaire. Those are the popular ones. They just didn't relist them. Which, that's an interesting choice, to say the least. Well, this puts you in a weird position, because for $1.69, if you just want to play Solitaire, and if you like the backgrounds and like this, it's not a terrible idea. But you still are competing against something like Tabletop Simulator, which they're not listing here, where you very easily could just play any Solitaire game and customize it with any art you'd want. It is still crazy that there hasn't been a major embracement for making your own card art, like and sharing packs left and right. It would be very easy to have layered PNGs, because PNGs in particular also have an opacity level to them. Which means you could, let's see, do this.
Welcome to the city of hopes and dreams.
An evolver, I guess. So you could easily just have a standard format of a zip file that that contains 52, 54 images with maybe multiple layers on top of them. It wouldn't even be that hard to then expand on a standard like that and have visual animated GIFs or video in general. But that's never happened. So I guess this needs to go on the following list. Yeah. I would also have to consider, like, do you want to pay $1.69 potentially to a developer going by the name GamerGirl versus Microsoft and going to the Microsoft store and buying the Microsoft Classic Solitaire collection. The only other game they've made last year was a Space Invaders clone, which it doesn't look terrible. This hardly looks like a developer that is just making low effort garbage. Okay. This.
Welcome to the city of hopes and dreams.
And then Evolve.
Now the fight begins.
Welcome to the city.
Hit that.
I suppose I've lost some of my edge.
Put that on the
Welcome
field.
to the city of hopes and dreams.
Do that. Hit that one.
Stand down.
I guess we'll end the turn there. You do definitely get into a weird position though, where I'm not sure if any Solitaire game ever can justify its price, even if it was the lowest price of 69 cents. Next we have a game on Steam here called SCP Mansion, which I don't know why you specifically invoke SCP versus just Haunted Mansion, but I guess both kind of work. This looks like this is mostly just going to be a horror haunted mansion escape room or investigation. Looks like it's VR. Interesting, and you're checking bodies. Or maybe you're playing as the bad guy. First-person 3D werewolf game based on the context of the SCP Foundation. Interesting thought. $1.69 English Chinese. Well, I'm always a little iffy on a Chinese game, but I think this deserves a follow. There's visuals here, there's polish here. This probably is not a game that you can play without online PvP, which I guess that's the reason to take it off the following list, is that I would just never be able to play with anybody else. But if you did have a group of friends, or if you were a YouTuber with a group of friends, more likely, this might be a very interesting offering. Of course, it also might be an interesting offering that turns out to be incredibly disappointing. Right, hit that, and hit that, and hit that. And 1, 2, 3. Seriously? Next we have Neon Snake, which is just Snake. That's easily dismissed. 89 cents English, 78 achievements. That's clearly an achievement game. Here we have a game called Seco, which looks like it's a box pushing game. Single screen Unity puzzle game. Doesn't seem like there's enough there. 79 cents isn't asking that much, but yeah. I really do need to realize that there's just a certain level of games that are so simple that I cannot possibly talk about them. And a box pushing game probably is in that level. You would have to expect to see 100 plus really good puzzles before you could even potentially even do a decent review or spotlight. Here we have a game called Human or Virus, which looks to me like it is a first-person shooting zombie game. There's either a decent amount of visual polish on the assets being flipped here, which I still think this is an asset flip game, but it does, this really does look like a zombie game. Here you have concepts here of like zombies pouring out of a window or climbing up in massive hordes. You've got a zombie lion. You've got a big robotic machine. So that really feels like there's something there. $9.59 isn't a crazy price. It's single player only, English full audio. That deserves a follow. Of course, that is also a kind of game where you might not really have enough people willing to play it to even give it the time of day. Let's see. According to TechRaptor, Astria Ascending revives Zodiac Orcanon Odyssey in 2021. This, I believe, is maybe one of the original Final Fantasy animators worked on this game. Yeah. It includes some former Final Fantasy developers. So there's this like reveal trailer. It definitely looks different. It's not just going for the old Final Fantasy, and the new Final Fantasy definitely looks really different, with the exception of like chocobos. All of the fantasy parts of Final Fantasy have been replaced with sci-fi parts, which at a certain point they probably should just call it final sci-fi. Crystallized countdown 10. I guess we'll have to do that. So, yeah. It is probably worth mentioning that several Final Fantasy developers over the years have gone to make other games, like Saga, the Scarlet Grace game series, for instance, originally were Final Fantasy developers. So, so there's a element of weirdness in that. And then TechRaptor has another article here, and I don't know if Westerners are really going to see how big a story this is, but this is kind of the biggest news more likely than in 2021 for all of 2021. The Famitsu editor. Remember, Famitsu is the most trusted Japanese video game review magazine out there, and their reviews were held at extremely high regard. They've given out maybe 4 or 5 perfect scores because of the way they have 4 people review a game and each gives a score of between 0 and 10 points. So the idea of the editor being arrested, the idea of anybody being accused of any crime in Japan is immediately scandalous. But being arrested for alleged fraud is hugely shaking. A fraud of $3,600 is also a pathetically small amount of fraud in an impersonation ruse. Now, this is one editor, not the main editor, so you take that. Japan's biggest legacy video game publications that have been running since 1986 has been arrested. A 43-year-old Iichi Sato was tasked with editing freelancer articles, is being accused of pulling off an impersonation ruse to collect freelancing fees of his articles. So he was an editor who was writing reviews and articles under a pseudonym and then collecting and pocketing fees. But being the editor, he would have also been in a position of power to assure that his freelancing quote-unquote pseudonym character would have gotten more work. According to Yahoo Japan, Sato was arrested on the 25th by the Aichi Prefectural Police between March and June. Sorry if you can hear the lawnmower outside. Sato is reported to have contributed freelance work under an assumed name, charging the manuscript fee for his to his office and transferring it into an account in someone else's name. Totaled up, he claimed to a total of around 400,000 yen, a bit over $3,600, and about 12,000 per article. So 3 articles. You can see that the local police have put Sato's computer name and mobile phone number as display, as well as his bank booklets and cards. So, yeah. And that really goes to show just even the hint of impropriety and the high standard that all reviewers and all news reporters and all critics should hold themselves up to. That, no, you can't do it once. You can't fake and commit fraud. The problem here is that he charged. If he had simply told his told Famitsu, his bosses, that I was short on articles, so I wrote some myself under a pen name. I'm not charging for this, obviously, because you're already paying me. I'm already under salary, and probably should have sought permission, and in Japan, certainly seeking permission pretty much means it would never get and it will never happen. But the idea of doing this is kind of crazy. Let's see. What I suppose is also worth mentioning is that, and TechRaptor is pointing this out, is you don't usually get $1,200 per article by any means. I imagine a lot of freelance journalists are getting about $50 an article, depending on the words, for the word count. I would be surprised if there's anybody in the West even paying $150 an article, which, in all fairness, if you think about how long it would really take you to write a good article around a game, it probably would be a week's worth of work, and so you should be getting paid somewhere around, let's say $600 an article. $1,200 if you are really, really good. It's reasonable. That might be the more objectionable thing about this, other than it is just immoral, is the idea that you made so much money pulling this scam off.
Is that how you treat a lady?
Let's see. Don't want to play that, so I guess I have to play this. I guess it is also important to point out that the bigger controversy is how little video game journalists get paid. But then again, video game journalists kind of suck too. Let's just be honest. They have been reduced to the bottom of the barrel because of the small amount of pay. But they almost always write the most minimal, most simplistic garbage. And on top of that, they also throw in ridiculous side conversations, usually SJWE. So it is very hard in my mind to think to myself, it's like, oh yeah, video game journalists deserve to be paid $1,200 an article, which, in fairness, yeah, they probably do. If you're going to have a career, and this is a part of a bigger argument, certainly, where people are just going to need to be paid a lot more, or universal basic income is just going to have to become a thing. One or the other, probably universal basic income. But people are going to have to be paid more, otherwise, doing less. Doing less quality work, doing less amounts of work, working lesser hours. That's just the only way that you maintain a monetary system which is suffering from inflation, or has inflation. Well, and then
Every shot is a miracle. Is that how you treat a lady?
yeah, I think I'm gonna be able to win here. So yeah. And in all fairness, if they were paying freelance journalists and video game journalists $1,200 to write an article, all of a sudden articles would be a lot better, and all of a sudden the quality of the journalists would be a lot better. Like, I know at least one person who who has a degree in journalism and does not use it. I'm sure I could probably find dozens, if not hundreds, of people very quickly that were earned journalism degrees and don't use them. It would be very easy to replace the bad video game journalists everywhere with new ones, better ones, if there was pay around it. I don't know where you get the money to pay the journalists. That's the problem in general with journalism. Anyways, that's frankly the better argument for just universal basic income. If just every human on the planet got $1,200 a week, and then it would just be the passionate people writing video game journalism articles. But yeah, that probably for Japan, if not for the entire world, is going to be the biggest controversy of 2021. With the exception of just the pandemic and shortages in general, shortages getting worse by the by that Evergreen ship being stuck in the Suez Canal, which I think it's unstuck now. I haven't been paying much attention to that, but slight delays of a couple days might cascade into delays for weeks and weeks of products. Moving on, we have a game here called In the Dark Forest, which looks like it's a tower defense. They're calling it a side-scrolling shooter. It doesn't look very visually appealing. It's $1.79, English only. I've got the hiccups. Here we have a game called Systematic Insanity. It is tagged with sexual content and nudity, so I should probably double check to make sure all these screenshots are YouTube family friendly. Yeah, they are. So, let's see. Seems to be like it is just asset flip visual novel things. Not a lot of different character models, just red-haired girl with twin tails versus red-haired girl with long hair in a yellow bikini. $8.59, third-party EULA, English only. Yeah, I don't see anything there of interest other than the fact that we can potentially reset the clock as far as the last time we saw a game that had tags of nudity and sexual content. But yeah, I don't like Super Seducer 3 aside, that's quite a tongue twister. There hasn't really been a controversy as far as an adult game not being allowed on Steam in probably 8 months. That might be that they are just getting much better about saying and telling people right up front that they're not going to have any kind of game that has lolly art in it, or art that even looks close to lolly art. But otherwise they seem to be willing to allow most of everything else. Although that one game that had the lolly artist create a game that had nudity in it, I feel like that game in particular, Valve could potentially re-release that and gain some goodwill, because that game had like no sexual content according to the creator at all, and it simply was just that it was a different art style, and the idea of rejecting a specific art style is kind of crazy. It would be like if a museum wouldn't allow a certain type of painting just because they don't like the Van Gogh-ness of it, or the brush strokes. I mean, that argument in particular felt very weird to say, well, this is not my style, my favorite style of art, therefore I'm not gonna let it be sold. Or I don't like this style of art, therefore I'm not gonna let it be sold.
Breach of contract.
That is not anywhere close to the libertarian mentality. Although in all fairness, maybe Valve doesn't believe in the libertarian mentality anymore. There have been plenty of rich people who preached libertarian mentality 10 years ago and have just kind of quietly gotten away from that, and they're no longer talking about it. It was definitely a rich person thought that was getting spread around amongst rich people. And people have either become extremely more so committed to their own political leanings in the past 8 years, I would say, or they have silently, quietly decided to stop holding those beliefs and are embarrassed by it and don't want to admit that that's the case, which is in fairness. I don't need to rub things in people's noses either. I'd much be happier if someone be embarrassed by something and change the way they feel versus just doubling down on something because they're embarrassed by it. Anyways, moving on back to video games, we have a TechRaptor article here. Assassin's Creed 2 among Ubisoft's games that are losing its online features, which I feel like I looked at Assassin's Creed 2 maybe 2 years ago, and the online features even there then didn't really matter because you could not you could not like get into a game anyways. But the fact that these are all games that would have come out just about the same time, and they were all pushing having online features when they really did not need them. Like Assassin's Creed 2 did not need its online features. Prince of Persia: Forgotten Sands, Far Cry 2, maybe Anno 1404. I could see Might and Magic Clash of Heroes wanting that. Splinter Cell Conviction, Settlers 7, Might and Magic Online, Might and Magic 10 Legacy. Like, this is also just an obvious case of Ubisoft being kind of jerks and not willing to spend what would have been not that much money to maintain a server. I imagine you could have rolled all 8 of these games into a single server by today's standards and have them just spin up and spin down, and just to keep those things. Of course, who knows what kind of back-end software or back-end contracts they had actually running those servers. It could be that Ubisoft was using something that was running also the PlayStation Store servers, and since it has now been confirmed, and we'll talk about that later, that the PlayStation stores are shutting down for PSP and PS Vita and PS2 and PS3, I believe, also PS3, yeah. That we may just be in a case where where Sony's actions is affecting Ubisoft's actions. Here we have a garbage game called Real-Time Mining Simulator, which looks like nothing. Early access for no reason, $6.79. Yeah. I would never buy or play a game that was simulating mining, because I'd be afraid that it actually was mining and Bitcoin mining for someone else. Here we have an interesting game called The Third Day, which looks like it is a point and click based off of Jesus after the resurrection, and it seems like it goes in a lot of different directions, and it seems like it definitely is a joke game. The Jesus is drawn a lot like you would expect from a Family Guy game. Biblical science fiction game. $9.99, Spanish full audio. Interesting. It does have English subtitles. So we never really get too many games based on religion. If you do, you get a Doom clone that is set in Noah's Ark and you're shooting animals with a slingshot, giving them feed. There were some NES games that were terrible that were inspired by Christianity. We could certainly go into long rants, and we'll just skip it as far as which religions are potentially used as basis for video games and parodies and like spin-off thoughts, and pretty much it's never a pure Judaism game, with the exception of El Shaddai, which is pretty much the closest to a pure Judaism game that has ever been made, and that was made by a Japanese creator. But even if you were to make that argument, there aren't that many Christian games either. And there might be some quiz games out there that ask like Bible verses. Ironically, Assassin's Creed 1, probably the closest game to anything being based on Islam. And it's not really based on that at all. It's just kind of set in that time frame, and then they try very hard to conveniently forget that would be the time frame. And by the time you are through the Assassin's Creed 2 trilogy with the Ezio games, you are fighting the Pope and Catholicism anyways. And when they jumped back in time, they did it to set it in Egyptian time, which I don't know if there was any elements of Judaism shown in Origins. And then they jumped to like Vikings times. So yeah, there's just kind of nothing going on as far as things based off of religion. Although, in all fairness, you can't really base anything off of Islam, because there was a controversy just a couple years ago where a Muslim musician made a song that included lines or from a Muslim song or a Muslim prayer or something like that. So the Muslim made a Muslim song. He thought it was appropriate, and then they used that song as background music in one of the I think the original Sackboy games, and that became just a huge controversy when it was realized that they recalled the whole game and patched it out. Which there is definitely an argument for all religions. If you can't even talk or include or in any way involve religion because it's so sacred, that's a way to protect anything from any form of criticism, because the soft criticism of parody or spoof or spin-off that can exist doesn't always exist. Is probably the first form of criticism you would have coming out. Of course, there is also the problem specifically when you talk about like a game like this, where this could easily just be a troll game. this could easily be nothing of quality, or it could be mediocre. This is getting released somewhat close to Easter, which I guess that is the appropriate time to release something like this, if you think about it.
100% string and 0% fluff.
Okay.
Coming at you.
Go ahead and evolve this one now.
Welcome to the city of nightmares.
And then do this.
A spin and a twirl and out. There's our puppet again.
And then I guess we might as well just play one.
I'll live again.
There we go. Yeah, there would be risk, certainly, even for a YouTuber like me to cover that game. My YouTube channel is so small, I doubt it would cause any real controversy. There would be risk in me covering it in that I could potentially spout something offensive. It is probably only a matter of time when we have a pure YouTuber have a fatwa released against them, or Christian or Jewish equivalent of that. And then it is also worth mentioning, like, Buddhism and Shintoism and Hinduism, all fairly commonly depicted in small elements in Japanese games, and they're kind of just ignored and overlooked. Like, the thing in particular I would say about Buddhism is that its overall concept is not a concept I agree with, which is the abandonment of all earthly ties and focusing internally. Buddhism itself only works because it has created this air of reverence around it. Like, the Buddhist monks themselves literally would starve to death in one generation if it weren't for the fact that they have convinced people in Eastern countries to give food to the Buddhist monks in order to earn good karma. So, like, it is just not a logical way of thinking. It is. If you were to introduce the concept of Buddhism in general now, somebody would go, "Oh, so you're just lazy and you're going to try and mooch off other people." I'm not super familiar with Hinduism, so I can't criticize it too much, although I would say it's probably just another polytheistic religion that doesn't seem to show a lot of evidence of being useful to real world matters, which you can say for almost every religion. And somehow I've gone into a religion rant on a video game channel. And then Shintoism is giving, like, reverence to the dead, which honestly that concept alone is kind of pointless. But also reverence to objects, to having sacred trees, and nature being sacred, umbrellas after 100 years of being faithful servants to their owners, getting their own spirits and becoming sacred ghosts. And the one thing I will applaud the Japanese for is that they pretty much don't pay any real heed to Hinduism or Shintoism or Buddhism. They take the parts that they like for fad reasons more than anything and ignore the rest. Although there are still enough people that do take it seriously in Japan. enough that it is still slight concern. Anyways, moving on, we have a game called Siimi, S-I-I-M-I, which looks like it's a point-and-click adventure. Seems to me like you're playing as a character that is spending a significant amount of his time hiding behind bushes. See, game designed as a criticism of the unnatural standards placed upon us in our appearance-oriented society. Okay, well, interesting to see a game have a message. $9.99, English and Korean. Yeah, I certainly would say the Koreans in particular, all about appearance. A lot of fads and stuff around appearance. Although, frankly, if you look at Korean TV and movies, it's like the Koreans also particularly good looking. But that could be at the downfall of people being ostracized if they're even a few pounds overweight or their BMI is a little too high. Let's see. Well, hit this, and this, and then this, and then that, and that, and then do this, and do this, and then do this, and that. I ran out of time. Here we have a game called Knights of Crumthor 2, which looks like nothing of interest. A kind of top-down battle simulator that looks like it's using RPG Maker type graphics. No, 84 cents. Boy, did I misread that. No, I wouldn't really call this RPG Maker graphics. I'd just call it terrible graphics. Let's see. Take Raptor has an article. Monster Hunter Rise saves are being locked by a bug. Apparently, a DLC gesture, hand gesture, I assume, is causing the saves to be locked. The Action Heart Pose DLC gestures or setting either the action bar or quitting the game can cause an error preventing you from opening the save file next time you launch the game. Interesting. That is not the kind of bug that should exist in any game by any means. That is horrifically terrible. Tech Raptor also has an article here. Candlekeep Mysteries Rydo wants to remove his name after the content was significantly changed. So a freelancer writer who worked on the Candlelight Mysteries book for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition has asked for his name to be removed, which Hasbro owns. Wizards of the Coast owns Dungeons & Dragons now. Hasbro owns Wizards of the Coast, so that is yet another controversy. I am not sure if anything so apparently he described people as simple and utilitarian and was told to remove those descriptions, which that seems to be an arbitrary censorship type SJW thing. And he's saying nearly 1,300 words of 7,000, so it was significant. Like over 1/7 of his writing were cut. Which, yeah. It seems to me extremely weird and odd and off-putting, to be honest, to think that Dungeons & Dragons is going through a name policing or word policing phase of extreme SJW-ness. I mean, I feel like Dungeons and Dragons in particular barely was holding on to its fandom as it was. And I know they're probably desperate to get new fandom into the game, but this is not the way I think that you're going to succeed with that. Let's see. Gamma Sutra has the list of the IGF 2021 Design Student and Visual Art Awards, the juries for them. So this is who would be at the Independent Games Festival Awards, although this may all be being done online. See if we can recognize any names. We can recognize Benet Foddy, who is the creator of Getting Over It with Benet Foddy and Quap and Growth and Sports Friends. Whereas the rest of these names, I bet I don't recognize a single one of them, because even though games do have credits, it's not like I pay attention to them at the end of a game. I'm done with the game by the time the credits play. They should put the credits at the beginning, frankly, for the major contributors, and do the movie thing. Yeah, so there's a list of people here. They all look like they're independent game developers, which seems appropriate that they would be the jury. They would be potentially the successful independent game developers out there. Monster Hunter Rise has also shipped over 4 million copies according to Gamma Sutra, if that interests you. And then Gamatsu has a 1992 shoot-'em-up sequel, Androdunos 2, being announced for the PS4, Xbox One, Switch, 3DS, which is odd, and Dreamcast.
And that concludes today's sermon.
Coming out for the 3DS is more weird than coming out for the Dreamcast, because yeah, it'd be easy to basically have a hack Dreamcast that would play a game like this, and a game like this really isn't going to push pixels that hard the way it looks, but putting it on the 3DS seems kind of crazy. And I wouldn't be surprised if both the 3DS and the Dreamcast versions get canceled. Wouldn't be surprised if they immediately knew it was going to get canceled and never had any intention whatsoever to release it on those consoles. And then Blue Reflection Second Light has been announced for the PS4, Switch, and PC, and Blue Reflection Sun for the iOS, Android, and PC has been announced, and that's been updated. Blue Reflection, I believe, is, I'm going to say mecha game. It doesn't look like a mecha game. If, from the looks of it, you would assume that this is some weird JRPG. And it is fairly weird because you have like fantasy girl, and then girl and schoolgirl outfit. So maybe it's an isekai where the schoolgirl outfit girl ends up in a different world.
Mother, Father.
See, this clearly is going to be a big project from Koei Tecmo. Because they've got an anime coming out around it too. Yeah, I don't. I'm not getting any details though as far as what the actual focus is. Well, I will kill 1. This will do 5.
My blade is your salvation.
Let's hit that. heal. Play that.
Is that a human?
Let me make sure this game listing is YouTube family friendly. The problem here is that the images are kind of pink on pink, so I can't really tell if I'm seeing a girl in a pink dress, or I think that's what I'm seeing. So here we have something called Otaku Club, which is just jigsaw puzzles with anime girls. Yeah. $21 English full audio. Still very weird that you have a Asian publishing name and yet it doesn't even support this. Seems like there's only 7 different images, which, man, if anything, I guess the argument of non-fungible tokens have somewhat already existed in these garbage puzzle games on Steam, and garbage games that are showing you very, very small numbers of images for a very high price. And yeah, there's definitely an argument that with the introduction of concepts like non-fungible tokens, we have hit the end of legitimate capitalism, or the beginning of the end of legitimate capitalism, because nobody has anything of actual tangible value to sell anymore. I would much prefer, instead of non-fungible tokens being a thing, public domain and the end of extremely long copyright should be a thing.
Activate.
Of course, that gets back to the universal basic income concept, or at least getting charters to create art, so that you can feed yourself while you are creating art. Next, we have a game on Steam called Emerald Solitaire 2 Collector's Edition. Not from Big Fish Games. Almost every other game that says Collector's Edition is. So this is $6.99 with full audio. So I guess the question would be, what is the other game? Emerald Solitaire 2 Collector's Edition. We have an Emerald Solitaire Endless Journey. So you have a free-to-play game here with in-app purchases, which looks very similar, if not the exact same, as its sequel, which it kind of should look similar to its sequel. Yeah, it looks different enough that it feels like it's a different thing. Is $6.99 too expensive for Solitaire, particularly this type of Solitaire, which really isn't Solitaire? I think probably it is. Plus, I don't think I would really want to play and cover another Solitaire game in general, so I'm just going to skip that. Here we have something called LASIK, L-A-S-H-E-K, or Lashik? Probably Lashik. I'm seeing a lot of images here, dark screenshot images, but I'm not seeing anything else. Dollar, English, Russian. I'm going to say no to that. See, I guess we'll play this. Gamatsu has this Gym Drops Direct set for April 2nd, which will talk about the game Laid Back Camp Virtual Lake Matsu and Formoto Campsite, Kojin Sword of Rewind, and one unannounced title. So 4 games. it's gonna be weird certainly to start seeing Japanese companies trying to have directs. Small Japanese companies have directs. It might work as well for them as anything else. It might also be a huge mistake. I feel like a specific E3 equivalent, which did exist for Japanese games, should be taken digitally as one big presentation or collection of presentations. That's where it starts to make sense, because Japanese companies are really only going to maybe announce 100 games, where E3, thousands of games could have been announced per year, and most of them would have been overlooked. We already talked about Monster Hunter Rise shipments and digital sales topping 4 million. Atelier Ryza series shipments have topped 1 million, which is saying something considering there's only 2 Atelier Ryza things. These are weird designs on shorts. I did not... This is like a different style than what I think she normally is animated with. The idea of having like elastic and then splits on the front is weird. But I guess maybe for movement purposes that makes sense. Atelier Ryza 1 came out in September 2019. So it's been, I believe, already established as the most successful Atelier game in the series. I boned this up.
It seems I've lost.
A game called 7 Years From Now is coming to the Switch and PC on May 28th in the West, which is from P-Cube. See what this trailer looks like. Looks to me like it's a pixely blocky game. So if there's a story behind this, maybe that would get enough reviews to make me interested in it, but in all honesty, just looking at it as it is, I am thoroughly unimpressed with it and uninterested. Nexion has sunk $874 million into Hasbro, Bandai Namco, Konami, and Sega Sammy. Nexion being the publisher of Maple Story. Seems like they really wouldn't have that kind of money to then invest in such big companies otherwise. I think Hasbro is an American company, whereas Bandai, Namco, Konami, and Sega Sammy are all Japanese companies. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe Hasbro did get acquired by a Japanese company. Basically, they're selling it as a investment, friendly investments in other companies to make money, and not some kind of attempt to buy influence or make a hostile takeover, which is pretty much how every investment is always described. TechRaptor has an article here, a review for Doctor Who: The Lonely Assassins, which I think we had already kind of seen this review. Wow, I guess not. Doctor Who: The Lonely Assassins is a fun follow-up to a fan favorite episode with a creepy mystery to solve and a planet to save. Pros: creepy atmosphere and fun scares. Pros: intriguing mystery and interesting characters, new and old. Cons: it's a short runtime that clocks in at 3 hours long. There's a weirdness certainly too. If this is like the only good Doctor Who game worth owning, I don't know if it's really worth owning any Doctor Who game. Let's see.
Biceps will usher in a new age.
We could evolve, or we can just do this.
Best of luck to you.
So I think I'm gonna have to just drag that tab and investigate that later. Here we have a game on Steam called Solitaire, which this looks like a interesting outfit this character is wearing, but I'm not sure what they're really doing. If anything, it feels like you're running around investigating a spooky school or something. A realistic Chinese-style multiplayer 5 versus 1 horror game, the official sequel to Notes of the Soul. This game was designed based on the multifarious, I don't even know what multifarious means, Chinese cultural, including the 5 elements and the 8 trigrams and folklore. Okay, well, it's definitely seemingly selling itself on being Chinese, which I don't know if that's a good selling point. You can also see it's all written in Chinese. It's free, online PvP, Chinese, full audio with English alleged subtitles. I question how well the subtitles would even be if they can't get their store translated. Honestly, this just kind of looks asset flippy more than anything. It does look like they just flipped a bunch of character models and well, if I do this and then do this and that. Attack with that. I think will be good. Next we have something called Din In-Ho Adventures Definitive Edition. I feel like that should be Dino, but I don't know how you would pronounce that. Dino. It's almost like it's the Spanish word for Nino, which would be little boy. Combined with dinosaur, and it looks like a platforming game. I don't know if I'd really want to call this a frustration platforming game, but it probably is. Like almost every platforming game these days are frustration platforming games by my book. Even some of the like Mario games are frankly frustration platforming games. I like the art style here, so I'm gonna give this a follow. I'm gonna give it a chance.
100% string and 0%
Okay.
fluff.
We're waiting for Skybound Art of 13.
A spin and a twirl and up.
And
There's our puppy
gets
to
that number up higher.
Now
And
the
then
fight begins.
evolve that up.
To the city of
Still need a few more turns. Here we have a game called RTO Tales of the Darkland Deluxe Edition, which looks to me like it's some, I don't even know, they're calling it an action adventure game, but every screenshot makes it seem like you're barely doing anything. It kind of feels like a Castlevania clone with no characters, like it, which I think pretty much just makes it a platformer. There we saw some small characters. Yeah, I don't think there's enough gameplay polish here. I think this would just be frustrating. $9.99, English only. And he just conceded because I was taking too long.
seems to be over.
Yeah. The weekly limit probably wouldn't stop me from getting up to like 58, but I don't think in the next day I'll play enough to get into 58. Here we have a game called Pro Wrestling Sim, which looks like it's nothing. $19.99 English only. I don't know why you would want to play a simulator in which you were simulating running a pro wrestling league. Anyways, you could just do that in your own fantasy thing in your own mind. And then you get into the problem, particularly with kayfabe in simulating professional wrestling. Gamatsu has EA Sports PGA Tour being announced. EA is going to return to golf with a new game built on the Frostbite engine, which is crazy that they're still using their own engine. That is weird. Yep. It would be funny if EA went out of business and got like split up and purchased by a whole bunch of other companies, because most gamers, including myself, would probably love that in theory, but in reality it probably would just make the EA collection of games that they do have the rights to even worse. But you could imagine Embracer Group doing right by some of the EA old lineups. And it really is just EA's old games that people care about, except for the people that are playing FIFA, and then FIFA players are just a whole different subspecies of gamers, as it were. And that's probably more derogative than I meant for it to sound, but yeah. Okay.
Welcome to the city of hopes and dreams.
We do this.
To die or not to die.
Best of luck to you.
Things I do for fashion.
Gamatsu, sorry, went quiet there. Wreckfest is coming to the PS5 on June 1st. Which, okay. Wreckfest is obviously a racing game with a lot of focus on wrecking cars. Which I could see myself covering that game, because it's of the small number of things I have reviewed as far as racing games. Most of them have not been around the idea of wrecking cars. If I do this,
Biceps will usher in a new age.
and then evolve this,
Coming at you.
Welcome to the city of nightmares and despair.
and do that, and then that,
Can I haunt you too?
and then hit that. So that might work.
Team time.
TechRep has an article. Sega has issued a DMCA over Steam database's Yakuza Like a Dragon page. Here we can say this page was taken down because Sega is claiming that we distribute their game here. We don't. See the street for more information. This is insane because, as far as I know, SteamDB does not distribute nor sell any games at all, nor does it even make original content. It is simply a database that is collecting and collating ad copy, which is not copyrightable anyways. And so this once again highlights how the Japanese do not care what even their own copyright laws say, let alone what America's copyright laws say. But it does not look good for Sega, which Sega was definitely not above scoring even before this point. Alright, well, I guess we have to do this one.
Yeah, I love it. Of course I do.
Time to get
We might as well just evolve this guy too.
Abs more cut than dime. Time to get cut. Protein time.
Let's see. Terraria update will bring Steam Workshop support and more, according to Tech Raptor, which is that. I'm sure that's what people are very happy to hear about. Terraria being a fairly old game, though. And frankly, I don't see anybody online, any YouTubers, talking about Terraria, whereas people are still playing Minecraft like crazy. But I bet there's enough of a fandom out there. Let's see. Here we have a game called Industry Idol, which looks like it's kind of an ugly automation game. Free to play, but then an expansion pack for $4.99. English only. Here we have a game called Problem here, which is tagged as a survival horror. I see some decent graphics as far as locations, but I'm not really seeing a gameplay mechanic or an enemy. Is this a horror game? I guess it is. $9.99 online PvP only. So, yeah, that's not the kind of game I would play. It definitely feels like it's trying to be a 3D Among Us without looking like just a ripoff of Among Us. Although that is going to become a pathetic accusation to make on games fairly quickly, as anything in space doesn't inherently mean that it's an Among Us ripoff. Here we have Extreme Peg Solitaire, which, yeah, this might be fine if it had a bunch of puzzles to it, but it visually doesn't look particularly interesting. 99 cents, 60 puzzles, English only. Yeah, I suppose if that interests you, check it out, but I bet you could find a better version of the same thing elsewhere. Here we have a game called What's Wrong With You, which seems to be in German. A quiz for 64 players with different flat art icons, avatars. $10.79, says it has full audio for every language. It's single player only. That is weird. Like, that really drops the ball. You just wouldn't want to play a game where you're going against 64 AI players. That's silly, to say the least.
Is that a human?
Here we have a game called Flow Gear Racing, which looks like it's an ugly space racer game. Early access for $14.99, fairly expensive. We've started to see a decent pricing of at least low effort games. This is English only, requires VR. I would like to see more of that happen, frankly, where we are seeing cheaper games, even if they're not good quality games. And maybe a global recession is the thing that we needed to see that happen. Let's see, hit that. Let's see. Gamatsu Street Fighter V Champion Edition Spring Update. Live stream set for April 6th. Updates on Season 5, Rose, Oro, and more. So we're getting into a point where a lot of announcements for announcements are happening more than actual game content. Free defense cheerleader, don't need that. I could evolve that and not do anything. Deal 3 damage. That won't work. So basically I need to play this. And playing that and evolve that does not stop me from playing this to evolve this. Of course, I could have attacked with this, let this one die, and then evolve the other guy, which would have been a smarter move. I guess we can do that next turn. Gamatsu has PAX East 2021 is cancelled and been replaced with PAX Online 2021, set for July 15th to July 18th. PAX West and PAX Unplugged are expected to run as planned. Yeah, I'm sure those will get cancelled. Also, PAX in particular is going to suffer fairly hard, as it was very much a social experience and not so much around an advertisement experience.
Is that a human?
Wings of light, show your might.
I don't know why I didn't just evolve this. That would have made more sense.
I told you to leave.
By your will, O Lord.
No!
Let's see. Deliver Us to the Moon. Deliver Us the Moon is coming to PS5 and Xbox Series as a free upgrade for the PS4 and Xbox One owners. Which, I don't fully remember this game. I believe there is a game called Deliver Us to the Moon. It's more of a flat 2D graphics game. But I suppose if you already own that game, you might be enthused by that. Okay. 6 plus this. Or don't bother to evolve. And do 5 plus this.
I will save you no matter the cost.
Prayer is your plumage. Don't give up. I will persevere.
Stop!
I don't know how I got a link to this, but there's a Kickstarter for something called Vaca Volantis, which is a stop-motion platformer. They're gonna stop-motion capture the animations, which is probably an insane idea. I don't know why he doesn't have a mouth. This Kickstarter, I wouldn't be surprised, will never be funded. And if it was funded, I wouldn't be surprised if it never can actually deliver. It has a 82,000 gold, it's got 35,000 at the moment. Yeah, if you're gonna do a unique art style, you're going to need something to accommodate that. And yeah, you're gonna need a major backer for something like that. Gamatsu has Enlisted open beta launching April 8th, which looks like some kind of military game. Military first-person shooter. Doesn't look bad. Let's see. Vanish. That.
Today we'll lift some heavy scriptures.
Draw a card.
Keeps the doctor away.
I don't know if I can actually win here. Let's see. Gamma Sutra has a former Naughty Dog tech art director detailing Promethean AI world building technology,
Real battle begins.
which the idea of scripted designs of worlds is an interesting idea.
I will rise.
Yeah. That look at how little you had to do there to get a forest to just auto-generate. And see, this was the ultimate talk of things like Speed Tree, where you could reduce the amount of work to make something that's supposed to look natural and random anyways, versus focusing on more human design of architecture and level lineup. Now, does that mean this is going to be the end-all be-all of 3D modeling and world design? No. There's a very decent possibility that this is just something that does not work well with Unity or Unreal, and as such you're going to end up doing less work on it. Anyways, let's see, that is kind of ingenious to have something interact with gravity, drop its payload, and then be a spill. That's not something that I would have thought of.
Is that a human?
Back straight, eyes forward.
Let us pray for victory.
Faster, holier.
So yeah, this Promethean technology looks interesting. We'll just see how well it works. He left working for The Last of Us, Uncharted, and The Last of Us developer in 2018, and the fact that in 3 years he's got something to show is interesting. To say the least, it shows a good deal of progress.
The time is upon us. Hear the prophecy.
Here we have a game on Steam called Inline. I'm trying to cycle through different types of articles here. This looks like nothing. For $4.49. English and French, we don't get too many games like that. Here we have a Asian game, just with Asian characters. Looks to be like it's probably a Chinese RPG. Maybe a mobile game port. English is not supported, 99 cents, Chinese only, yep. Doesn't look terrible, we've seen worse. And yeah, I'm not particularly winning great here. Here we have a game called Dungeon Slime 2, which seems to be a box sliding puzzle game where you change the shape of your slime. So at the very least, this is a different concept. It's not just a generic box pushing game. There is more interactivity to it. So there might be something in that. $1.59, English, Portuguese, Brazil, and Spanish, Latin America. If this is Dungeon Slime 2, then I guess the question is, is Dungeon Slime 1 worth looking at? And I think the answer to that is probably yes, but I'm going to put it on the follow list. Yeah. This might be very boring. Getting this for $1.99 also would not be a big commitment either. There might be very few puzzles in this whole thing. And at a certain point, I don't know if you can make a Dungeon Slime 3 or if you would just run out of puzzles. Or interesting puzzles at that point. Here we have Exodium Episode 11. I remember Episode 10 since it only came out about 2 weeks ago. So these are not getting released. French only, $1.99. Well, I guess I don't have to put them on the follow list because they don't support English anyways. Ratchet & Clank 2016 has a 60 frames per second PS5 patch launching in April, which is currently, the game itself is free via the PlayStation Store, or maybe the patch is free. Yeah, until March 31st. The Play at Home campaign, you can get the original game as an advertisement for the newer Ratchet and Clank game that is about to come out. So here's the official notice. Important notice regarding PlayStation services. Discontinued PlayStation apps, features, and services include the PS3, PS Vita, and PSP store closure, PlayStation communities, the PlayStation communities feature for the PS4 console, the PSP, PS Vita, and PSP purchase on web and mobile stores, so you literally cannot purchase any of these games. You will be able to reinstall games you have purchased, but at this point it is ridiculous to make a legitimate argument to buy something that's not going to be supported starting very soon. It would be much better to just say, you know what, forget it. Just go hack your PS3 and get a bunch of ROMs. At this point, they are abandoning these platforms, and as far as I'm concerned, that makes every game that runs on the PS3, PSP, and PS Vita abandonware. Legally, maybe that doesn't stand up in court. What would? Really, who's really going to bother to take you in court? But they're making it impossible for you to have the experience that was once promised. They're also getting rid of the PlayStation Messages app for mobile devices. So they're just shutting down pretty much everything that they can get away with. User-scheduled events are being discontinued. Private community creation is being discontinued. Play Together is being discontinued. Sub-account creation on the PS3. Pluto TV on the PS3. Twitch on the PS3 and PS Vita. Messaging exchanges between PS3 and other platformers. Ustream. PlayStation community apps. They're removing Facebook integration for the PS4. Media Go update. PlayStation Vita terminated apps. Is there a longer list there? Include Twitter, Near and Live, applications YouTube, Facebook, and Skype. PlayStation Video Service on Sony Bravia TVs. And games on PlayStation Mobile. So just a huge list there. So it at that point becomes a question, are they just running PlayStation into the ground, or is this just a case of the Sony Interactive of California destroying the last residual elements of anything that the Japanese Sony Interactive Entertainment of Japan had their hand in? Like, it is a very movie producer move to just basically cancel every project that you didn't sign off on or think of. But this is an incredibly long list of stuff to cancel all at once, and it's not like they have something different to replace it with. So they are taking away without replacing, and that is pretty unacceptable.
Oh, so it's a fight you want. Anyone call for a super sleuth?
Yeah, I would not. I would not be happy if I was deep into the PlayStation environment, for sure. And the only thing I could think is in the back of my mind is maybe Sony is just gonna drop the PlayStation brand altogether, and they're gonna come out with, Sony of Japan is gonna come out with a completely different brand and a completely different company. But I don't know any reason why they would do that. That seems like the only way you would do that is to get around union layoff negotiations, so you could fire a bunch of employees in Japan and replace them with cheaper labor. And even doing that for a video game company is an insane thought. So, if anything, I would just kind of assume Sega is the one to look to. Will potentially see Sega come out with a new Dreamcast.
Oh, so it's a fight you want.
Or to see some new company come in. But I don't even know who that new company would be. If anything, it feels like Apple would have been the one to come out with a video game console, and they can't do it because video game companies hate Apple with their terrible business negotiations. Microsoft can't come out with a second console. Nintendo can't come out with a second console. Well, they could, frankly. That might work.
Anyone call for a super
It-
sleuth?
Was a mystery.
Samsung could come out with a video game console, I suppose. That might work. LG or some other like
Oh,
cell
so
phone
it's a fight
company
you
type
want.
business might be able to come out with a video game console. Or Dell or HP, a PC game developer. Valve, theoretically, if they could get it right, could come out with a video game console. But I don't think so. I think we're going to very quickly see the PlayStation 5 hang on and still exist, but be mostly rejected by everybody in the world for bad business decisions. Which this was the exact position that that Xbox could have been in too, had they not reversed their always online desires. And if anything, I think the always online attempt probably deserved more scorn than it got.
I'll speak to anyone who will listen.
Moving on, the Anthem game director Jonathan Warner has departed BioWare after a decade.
Desert awaits.
So, initially worked on Mass Effect 3 as senior producer. So today is my last day at BioWare. I'm moving on to do new things. BioWare has been a home of Grateful Heart for nearly 10 years. I want to wish them all the best. Dragon Age, Mass Effect, and Star Wars The Old Republic are in good hands, and I can't wait to play them from this side of the screen. That's I suppose, a weird phrase.
This is where I truly shine. Someone's
That. That.
Best of luck to you. I shall give birth to
We have Neptunia Virtual Stars on Steam, which there might be some weirdness playing this in English because A, I wouldn't know the Virtual Stars, and B, I don't know if a lot of them are going to be dubbed, so you're pretty much going to have Japanese Virtual Stars speaking in Japanese. I believe this is also, they're calling it a JRPG and action RPG. I thought it was a rhythm game. They're calling it a music-based hack and slash. Interesting. $44.99, and then VIP edition gets you up to $80. Whereas if you buy the rest of this bundle, this bundle, I already have a significant amount of these games, but if I just buy the rest, it still would cost me $103. And I haven't gotten around to playing any of these Neptunia games. Japanese full audio. We're seeing it's mostly negative already. Let's see what the negativity is about. Game is a shooter, no uni, 0 out of 10. Another Neptunia game. It's another spin-off with a VTuber twist. After 10 tries of playing this game, I simply gave up trying. I was really hoping forward to play this game. Apparently it plays bad. I can't even play it. Yeah. So, seems like it's a straight up issue of it being unplayable. Well, I'll put that on the fall list, but yeah, at that price and negative reviews, that's not a high priority. I probably will never actually get it unless it gets better reviews. Doesn't feel like we've been going 2 hours, but I guess we have. We've still got enough tabs. I don't know quite how many. But no longer having the disappearing tab issue. Fix that. And also no longer even using a tab suspender, and that's not an issue either. So, particularly with having 64 gigabytes of RAM, that probably was never going to be an issue on my new PC. Here we have a game called Conquer the Universe, which just looks like it's a statistics visual game. They're calling it an idle clicker with RPG. Free to play. No in-app purchases, but boring as it can get. A Lemmings-style puzzle game called Tin Hearts is coming to PS5, Xbox Series, PS4, Xbox One, Switch, PC, and Oculus this winter. Which, the idea of replacing the Lemmings with a mechanical toy soldier is an interesting idea, because then you're getting even one step away from them being cared about when they fall off the edge and die. The background animations here and cutscenes are interesting, but I bet that's just the intro cutscene and that's it. Also, by having them little toy soldiers, that opens the realm of how you're going to manipulate the movement of the characters. There's still kind of a problem with the idea of a Lemmings game, because there's only so many different ways you can manipulate a person. This game looks like it's in 3D versus Lemmings being 2D games, and that helps, but even in 3D, all you can do is up, down, left, right, forward, and back, unless you're going to start adding angles to it, or barriers. Next, we have a game called the Falconer Atoon's Folly. Update is now available. I don't recognize this game. Oh. And this is apparently from the same developer or publisher. Giant Turtle. Is the Falconer the game where you had the falcon? This doesn't look anything like that game. So, let's go to the Steam listing, I suppose. It won a BAFTA nomination, which is basically to say nothing.
You're a big fella.
Here's the Falconer. It's mostly positive. It came out November 10th on 2020, and this must have just been a hidden gem that I missed. $22.49 seems a little expensive, but interesting that it's also saying you could play it with a flight stick, which basically nobody has flight sticks. Although nobody has fighting sticks either, and I just bought one. Right. It requires a controller, but not VR. So I guess I have to put this on the wish list. It's already met the relevancy issue. It's possible that this was below the positive ratings when I looked at it last time, and that might be the case, that it just got better. I'm gonna take this because I think that is a better,
All together now.
more dangerous card. A game called Tiny Troopers Global Ops has been announced for PS5, Xbox Series, PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC, due out in 2021. Let's see what the trailer looks like here. This again from Wired Productions. So they did have this, they kind of had a direct. This trailer's not showing anything. So yeah, I'm not enthusiastic about that game. Alright, I can kind of see the beginning of the end, I think. A retro arcade adventure game called Arcade Paradise has been announced for the PS5, Xbox Series, PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC. I would like to figure out a better way to list these. Particularly, they could do Xbox One /series, and that would at least save you 4 letters in that case. 4 letters in a space. This looks to me like this is a collection of fake arcade games, not real arcade games, parodies of real world arcade games. And playing them in a virtual environment. I don't know if that improves anything at all. I definitely do get that feeling sometimes when playing Pinball Arcade, though, that it feels like it would be a little bit nicer if you could simulate hanging around an arcade. Although, I have to admit that even simulating hanging around an arcade doesn't really do much for me, because when I was often hanging around arcades, they were often very empty anyways. Because I was into hanging around arcades a little bit past their prime. So very, very often I would be in a mall arcade and there was 2 people in the entire arcade. The last arcade I went into was giant, and you would expect it would have been crawling with people, and it was absolutely empty. 2 floors, probably 4,000 square feet on 1 floor alone. Just a giant arcade, and it was totally empty. Maybe that was the time I was there, but that was definitely crazy. Here we have a game on Steam called Paid Trade, which looks like you guess the random item is worth more than the one you currently possess. Also, it just randomly gets items off of like Google Shopping and asks you the price. Oh, that's pretty bad. They're saying this is an educational typing clicker game for 84 cents. This is obviously a low effort game that arguably may be doing some illegal stuff too. I'm not sure that you have a right to just steal images from Google Shopping, although maybe you do, because I'm sure Google Shopping is pretty much just stealing those images too.
Now the fight begins. Sheer hubris. What's your price?
That.
Rise again.
Or not to die.
Next we have Big Neon Tower versus Tiny Square, which looks like it is a zoomed out platformer with just polygons. Early access $4.99, bunch of languages, nothing there of interest. Alright, so that was 3 victories.
Seems to be over.
We needed like 6. Next we have Shattered Slime, which looks like another platforming game. We certainly are starting to see a lot of them. This one's free, so I guess the price is right. English only. So check that out if you're interested. Let me just make sure this is YouTube family friendly. The game Subverse sales have secured it the #2 spot on Steam. Of course, this is somebody getting cutesy with the title. Stellar Subverse sales secure 2nd spot on Steam. Subverse is the wonder why it says the connection is unstable. We're getting dropped frames all of a sudden. Oh no. Well, I guess we should just keep moving forward, whether this makes it or not. Subverse is the adult game where you simulate adult content with a multitude of characters. Some robotic looking, some demon looking. There we go. It seems like maybe we've reconnected. So. Nordisk Games has grabbed a minority stake of the Until Dawn developer Supermassive Games. That might be good because 30.7% stake seems like a lot. This might mean that we see more of the Until Dawn series eventually getting ported to PC. Their newer games, I think, are available on PC. It's just the older games. This is not really news, but it's caught my eye. There's a pre-order bonus for Atelier Ryza Lost Legends in the Secret Fairy Atelier Ryza. You get a Beware of Puni t-shirt and a blue Puni costume t-shirt, which is basically the character just in the t-shirt. Puni being, I guess, the equivalent of a slime. So they still are interested in promoting the main heroine of the Atelier series and catching the eyes of anyone interested in looting the character, right, for lack of a better term. Alright, well, I guess you do that one.
Thy little canary.
A first-person narrative adventure game called The Last Worker has been announced for the PS5, Xbox Series, Switch, PC, and Oculus, which is another Wired Games. Is this the last human who works a job, or is this the last robot worker? Yeah, it's not really showing you much, that teaser. Okay. If I do this, will that work? See. A Kickstarter campaign and demo for a rhythm adventure game called Unbeatable for PC launches April 6th. Which, at least if you are going to start a Kickstarter, having a trailer is interesting. This looks like an interesting art style. That being said, I'm not sure I could play a rhythm game like this. Yep. This definitely feels like some of the animes I've seen. Styles of art styles. One with the big drill that I never remember the name of in particular comes to mind. Big drill robot.
The time to awaken is here.
Let's see.
All I need's an opening and you're toast.
think I failed to do that, right?
Coming at you. Sorry, but the time one helping of this and it's nighty night for you. I'll live again.
Record of the Lost War Deed Light in Wonder Labyrinth full release is now available. This game, I think you'd have to be fairly into the Record of the Lost War series to want to play this kind of Castlevania clone. It doesn't look terrible by any means, but
Got your message loud.
I feel like I would have to play the Castlevania games first before playing a Record of the Lost War spin-off, which the rest of the Record of the Lost War games I do not believe actually play that way. I do this. I do this. That should get rid of that. Mages announces the laid-back camp game for console. I think we'd already kind of heard announcements for this game. Although they're saying it's coming to a console and not saying which console, which is definitely a terrible announcement to make. I'm not sure how many of these laid-back camp games, though, would make any sense to Westerners. Paradigm shift, or evolve this and do that. Can I do this and this?
I won't stop singing until there's world peace.
Now the fight begins.
Corny. There's as my guitar gently beats.
Cave in.
I take on the world for flame.
Here we have a game on Steam called Utopos, which looks like it's a top-down twin-stick shooter. Maybe with some space flying around, or maybe you're flying a ship. It's kind of hard to even see with the blinding bright lights. Early access, $9.99.
Not there.
I'm not interested in that. Here we have a game called Music 95,
End is near.
which looks like it's a infinite runner music game.
I can't sing enough.
$7.99, English only. Wonder if I scroll up and down too much. And okay. Zero damage from effects.
This is where I truly shine.
You're through.
I've got all the magic I need. Is that how you treat a lady?
A fitting end.
There we go. Let's see. Nobunaga's Ambition Rebirth has been announced, due out in 2021. Japan. From Koei Tecmo. I don't know if this is part of the Romance of the Three Kingdoms series. Well, almost certainly it might be the same story. So I don't know if this is a warrior style game where you're going to hack and slash, or if it's going to be more of a real-time strategy type game. The Epic Games Store changed their Twitter feed for a spring sale. And I think they may have had something else to say, but maybe not. See, nope, I guess not. It took them, on the 27th they fixed a problem. Which I've not been really highlighting problems with Epic Games Store and other storefronts like that very often anymore. It was getting redundant, and we kind of know at this point that they're fairly inconsistent. What can we do? Put this on the field. Put this on the field.
The city of hopes and dreams.
Put this on the field.
You're a big fella.
Do 4. To take this out. In the turn. Here we have a game called Desecrators on Steam, which just looks like an ugly first-person shooter, maybe flying around in 3D space. We may have even talked about this game already. $7.19, early access, English only. I have about 10 more tabs and that's it. Yeah, we already talked about this, but we can see this IWO con is already mixed. So the idea of making a game, the idea of this is fantastic, however everything about the execution is wrong. So like having a game thing, having a game jam in a digital form is ridiculous. Here we have a joke game called Gotchi Dungeon Master, and it's tagged with sexual content. It's basically a sex dungeon, which is for $1.49. English full audio. Frankly, it's exploitation. It's gay exploitation. It's making fun of gay people. Not that there aren't some gay people that live a sex dungeon like lifestyle. There's just way more people that don't. It would be the equivalent of making a straight gay game that tried to imply that every single straight person was into BDSM and sex dungeon lifestyles, which is also not accurate. Hit that. And hit that.
Blow on, dear wind.
Feel like I can potentially win. Next we have a game on Steam called Childhood Fears, which just looks like an asset flip horror game. $5.09, English full audio. Here we have a game called Nova Genetics, which they're saying is a survival base building game, but man, every dark screenshot I see tells me this probably is nothing. Like even in the trailer, it's just incredibly dark.
I'm so sorry.
This does remind me, we did have that whole Vin Diesel announcement of Far Cry. Was it Far Cry Primal? No, I don't think it was. It was something else. There's that whole Vin Diesel announcement though. And it came and went. Right. Let's see. Storm, last words due to damage to enemy weight. Rush and Drain. Bane and Ward. Well, did not realize that was going to work. Okay.
Usher in a new age.
Here we have a game called Metalheads, which is apparently part of the IWO con, but a standalone game jam game.
Curse 'em.
Doesn't look particularly interesting, but doesn't look terribly bad if it is a game jam game. Selling it for $11.19 though is kind of ridiculous. What in the world? I've never even heard of that card. Here we have Cybergrid Tower Defense, which obviously is just going to be a tower defense game and doesn't look that interesting. For free, English allegedly full audio. Do this.
100% string and 0% fluff.
Okay. So I hit one of these on the field.
Spin in a twirl and up. There's our puppet
And
again.
then we hit that. That means I can puppet bomb potentially
Time to get cut.
anybody. This next game is tagged nudity and sexual content, so let me check.
You're scarier than the dead. I'm coming for you.
So here we have a game called Save the Girls Action, which seems to be half-asset flip of a 3D model of a girl and half-asset flip of a zombie first-person shooter. Seems to be all over the place, like terrible. $1.19, English, Chinese. Alright, so we could do this.
Spin in a twirl and up. There's our puppet
And
again.
this, and then, well, I guess I can just also win. I was gonna do Puppet Bomb, but there's no reason to try and do Puppet Bomb when I could just win.
Seems to be over.
So the timer clearly is reset at this point as far as adult games, like particularly with Subverse coming out, it would be ridiculous to believe that any major censorship is happening. It Steam's part. I need 3 more victories ranked. I may have to play it a lot later on this night, unless I can get 3 quick disconnects in a row, which is unlikely to happen. Here we have a game called Still Model 3, which is just a 3D model being put in bondage ropes. It's tagged with sexual content and nudity. Although at a certain level, I think you probably are hitting the nail on the head quite well here to just have the character be a model willing to be depicted this way. It's almost empowering in a weird way to say, no, she's a employee and she's choosing to be the model for these shoots. It's not particularly visually interesting, and the ropes in themselves are not particularly well holding to the body, which that's really where this would get down to, is rope technology is pretty bad in video games. So you have a much better experience either doing real life photo shoots of this, which probably would not be sold on Steam, or hand drawing the ropes and the curvature of the ropes, where the parts of the rope would be tight versus where it would be loose. This is $4.99 English and Chinese. It's also probably, being Chinese doesn't get as explicit as you think. It does make an interesting argument against an adult version of like Pokemon Snap. What would something like that really be? We kind of had something similar to that in the first, in that zombie game, that the first one of the zombie series where you run through a mall. Forget the name of that series. I think it's called Dead Rising, maybe. But even in the photography elements there, that was just silliness and not really thought out.
Thy little canary.
And you do run into the danger if you were going to make an adult photography game, you potentially are going to have the characters come off as creepy people instead of more professional, which I think they probably are a little bit more professional than you would think if you're an actual erotic photographer.
Or not to die.
Here we have a game on Steam called Alex and the Lost Kingdom, which looks like it's a survival strategy game. It actually doesn't look too bad. The problem here is that it's just kind of the same thing we've seen with so many other games doing it that I'm so turned off by the concept. 1999, single player with a third-party UI, English only. I kind of want to put this on the fall list, so I'm going to, but almost certainly in a couple days' time I would totally reject this game just for being cliche at this point.
Are you some sort of imbecile?
Play one of those.
Do it for her.
It would be cool if you could combine puppets with necromancy, because puppets die all the time. Right, well,
Biceps will usher in a new age.
Do it for her.
attack there. And return. Blaster Master 03 adds an Xbox One version. It's due out alongside the PS4, Switch, and PC versions. And then here's that game that we first talked about where I was showing the wrong screen. Feed Da Pudi Samurai, which I still don't know if this is a troll game or not. And the trailer doesn't fully explain it. They put on VR, then they're in this like cabin, and then there's like this glitch or gate that takes them to kind of this Duke Nukem equivalent with just a bunch of anime characters all over the place. It really does just feel like what a Duke Nukem equivalent would be, and then you're running around shooting things. It's early access, it's $9.99, English full audio. This is probably nothing, but I'm not 100% sure it's nothing. Alright, well, here, and here, and do that,
100% string and 0% fluff.
and there, and there,
By your will, O Lord.
Do it for her.
and hit that. And so then that brings me back to my main Twitter feed. So I'll just see if there's any new news, and then we'll wrap up at 2 hours and 43 minutes. That's not terrible. Monster Hunter Rise has shipped over 4 million copies. I think we already talked about that. 2K is retweeting WWE Supercard advertisements for no reason. Binding of Isaac Repentance, maybe. Still new Binding of Isaac stuff, I'm not even sure.
Awaken, for the end is near. I'm so sorry.
Apparently Super Meat Boy The Lost Levels is a fan-made Discord dedicated to unearthing all sorts of Super Meat Boy content.
A fitting end.
Let's see.
Where can I find inspiration? I won't stop singing until there's world peace.
a look-see. Coming at you. My magic alone isn't enough for them.
Let's go ahead and play this too.
Watch as I wind and wind.
Running slightly low on puppets. So yeah, the Super Team Meat is promoting the Super Meat Boy Lost Levels Discord. I wouldn't be surprised if we start to see a lot of instances of people getting away from getting away from Discord if Microsoft actually acquires them.
Allow me to join you.
Although there isn't an immediate jump to something else. So
Why is it the string is so bright?
YouTube creator says get inspired by creators who are producing content. Let's see. What's it? What are we going for here? I guess hit that. Okay. And then hit that. And hit that.
Stay safe, my sovereign.
Hit that.
My pen's flying across the page.
That. Then
Now the fight begins.
I've got all the magic I need. Here goes. Is that how you treat a lady?
Oh, that was so dumb. That was so dumb. I could have taken him out with the puppet. I deserve to lose after that move. Yeah, YouTube creator says get inspired by creators who are producing content on important topics and making impact. Learn how to do this on your channel and contribute your points of view about issues you can you care about, and then it links to YouTube/inspire or yt.be/inspire, which, yeah, I'm sure there's plenty of people with plenty of opinions and messages that they would not appreciate or emphasize as far as YouTube. Like, YouTube really would have needed to be a voice for free speech and independence. And they definitely really aren't that.
String and 0% fluff.
Welcome to the city of hopes and dreams.
Wow.
A spin and a twirl and out. There's a puppy to
One, two, three,
Splendid.
see, I'm still scrolling down just to see what other articles we haven't talked about. I'm checking still for 4 different Twitter feeds. Twitter's just gotten terrible.
You will atone for wasting my time.
Let's do this.
Think well. There are 1,000 ways to die. You're through. The world is not mistaken. You are.
Biceps will usher in a new age.
Okay.
One hit
Can we do anything else? No.
I shall give birth to a new world.
If this guy attacks, he'll do 4 damage to his own, which might hurt him more than it helps him. I need somebody that costs 5
Here goes into the
mana.
blue and beyond.
Do not seek what is not there.
Perhaps you're who I've been waiting for.
Alright, well that pretty much fizzled out as far as new news, so let me check the Humble Bundle and see that there's no new Humble Bundles for any of that. We have one Asian Sokomon Chinese game, box pushing, which in all fairness, this does look way more interesting than most box pushing games. At least it has some personality and some art design to it, but it still looks pretty awful. $4.99 Chinese only. And then Brass Lion Entertainment is looking for a senior combat designer in New York, New York. Which, is that New York Borough or is that Manhattan? They're usually not so cryptic.
A fitting end.
Oh, that was stupid. Keep doing really dumb moves.
My little canary.
No way!
Let's see. Gamma Sutra has an article here. Devs say the pandemic has increased security risk in playtest challenges. CD Projekt Red being hacked, I guess, increases that evidence to that fact. But in all fairness, the security issues are real there. Like you have to be fairly careful with letting people VPN into your network if your network is not secure, which almost every network is not secure enough. So where would we hit on the battle pass? Like, we are a little bit away. We would need 450 to get to rank 56. And then probably would need just about that much to get to 57. Then 58, 59, and 60 would have been the one that we really would have wanted to reach, and we're just not going to make it. And if you were to like buy this right now, maybe this would give you some bonuses, but yeah, it's not worth it. It's not worth putting real world money into Shadowverse, unfortunately. LibRetro has RetroArch 1.9.1 shining brightly on Open Dingus, which is apparently some bit of hardware here. Yeah, it kind of looks like a Switch, although smaller. I'm not sure how many LibRetro cores, though, really would work on something like this. Let's see, it launches with 20 hand-picked cores, and the 4 to 7 have been added to the list. But yeah, RetroArch still churning away. There's a game called Ultra Hat Dimension that is on Steam. Someone retweeted this. Looks interesting. $4.99, bunch of languages. It's a puzzle game with hats. It may be a little too zoomed in for my taste, or zoomed out for my taste, but we'll give this a follow. Yeah, and I guess that is that. So yeah, just shy of 3 hours today. That's going to be it for the stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend or follow me on any social media sites, There's a whole bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and gift me a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.